Bob, I don't have a specific strong agenda at all. And I know yours was a little more, I think, Drupal community focused. Mine was just kind of like community management in general.
Oh, okay.
Um, I am totally happy to like drive the conversation. I don't have a presentation or anything. Um, if you have a question you want to kick it off with, I'm quite flexible.
So, I mean, I can kick it off, I guess. Let me go ahead and share my screen because I've got a note stock up here. Does everybody have the link to that? It's in the chat. I can copy it back in again. And we just got out of a conversation. April and Avi and I and a few other folks were there. And part of our conversation was more around virtual conference and tools and tricks and tips and all that kind of thing. Part of what we talked about was local user group engagement, and that was really the focus of the session that I posted. And while we were doing the planning, it sounded like these two sessions, the one that Tara had posted and the one that I had posted, could both be incorporated in the same one. So that's basically all I had. I was really specifically thinking when I posted mine about how do I get more people involved to help grow the Drupal community, and particularly a local user group that we have. And then around the Chicago area, we've got Chicago Drupal user group that is unmanned right now. So we're kind of taking a little hiatus until we can find people who are willing to throw down and help organize that. And then I organized one out in the St. Charles far west suburban area in Chicago called Fox Valley Drupal. And we always struggle with getting speakers and having content and all that type of thing. So the latest thing that we've been trying to do is use kind of an initiative for Drupal recipes to help be our kind of content guide as we've been building that. And that's going moderately well, more because there's not enough people working on it, but that's what we've been doing. So now I'm going to shut up and just take notes.
Cool.
Am I sharing my screen? I am, aren't I?
Yes.
Yes, good. Okay, cool. And I see Joe has joined us too. Katie, Leslie. Do we want to go around maybe and talk about why people are in this session and what you might want to talk about? I started already. Who's next?
I'll go next. I wanted to have a session about community stuff because it's just all I ever think about really anymore in Drupal spaces. At Pantheon, I run our community programming. So in the past 2 years, made a switch from just like enthusiastic community member to professional community manager, which has been an interesting journey. I'm in leadership positions in various ways in the community. And so it's always just kind of a topic in general that I'm happy to talk about, make space for, and hear what people are struggling with and how we might all come together. I'm Tara. I just realized I didn't say that. I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I use she or they pronouns. And I'm the lead of Drupal diversity and inclusion. I think that's the thing I do most community-wise in the Drupal space. So yeah, Katie and I work together. She'll introduce herself, I'm sure, later, but we manage the Pantheon community too. So that's kind of all the different places. And Albuquerque is a very small Drupal users group that hasn't met in a while, 18 months. I don't know if it really even counts at this point, if there still is one, but I'm always kind of interested in getting that back up and running too.
I can go next, I guess. I'm April. I'm from Asheville, North Carolina, and I work for Lullabot. And I'm also the director of Drupal Camp Asheville, and I work with the Drupal Community Working Group Community Health Team. It's a long acronym. And I guess some of the things that I'm interested in, we used to have a local meetup group, but it would end up being just me and one other person. And so we just, we haven't done anything, of course, during the pandemic, but also just organizing the camp really is my focus. I like to bring everybody to Asheville. So our users locally are very small in numbers. And so the focus, to not burn out is the focus on the event, the annual event. But I'm also interested in how do we engage like new developers or people, like engaging students who are learning code and engage them and bring them into the community and how to reach out to them and make them think, make them like convince them that Drupal is the space for them, right? Like, how do we reach out to them in a way that brings them into the community, I guess. Ta-da.
Yeah, I can go kind of following up on that. I'm Avi Schwartz. I'm the lead of MidCamp for 2021 and 2022, and I'm going to keep saying that so that I make it happen for real. Yeah, anyway, I work for the YMCA national office. That's been fun. But yeah, in Drupal land, I've been doing MidCamp, and then I've also been involved in the event organizer working group. So we're also kind of starting an initiative to try to get more consistent like onboarding messaging out at camps. So I kind of brought this up at the end of the last session. We can talk about it more, but yeah, it seems like there are a lot of places kind of doing this Drupal specific onboarding and a lot of need because we're all agreed that we're all getting old and need new people. So that's kind of where my focus lies. But I've also been thinking about this from the smaller side with work. I've gotten involved in the OpenY community, which is a really big community of YMCAs that are all using this Drupal distro. That's at this point one of the biggest Drupal distros out there, and running a software as a service platform and trying to kind of figure out the right balance of community things for that too. So it's been fun.
I can go next. I'm Leslie. I'm from Boston. So one of the organizers of Design for Drupal and also New England Drupal Camp. I'm with Avi. I'm on the Event Organizers Working Group Board. I'm also on the DA Board of Directors, community elected for that. So I'm here basically, I think it's been great the last year. I think there's a lot of virtual meetups that I've been able to attend and meet a lot of people that I haven't in the past because obviously I can't go to San Francisco and just drop into their meetup once a month. I also help with the Boston meetup, by the way. So we still have a virtual monthly meetup. We are definitely down in numbers compared to what we had in person, but we've had people join us from all over the globe that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So I think my focus in joining today was just to see what other people had for ideas for growing the community. I'm thinking globally growing the community, bringing in people who are Drupal users, who are not part of the community, who don't even know what a great thing the Drupal community is. And as April said, how can we get more students and younger folks involved with the community to help with burnout, to help take over all these camps and help run, organize things and, be the next generation to facilitate the growth of Drupal. That's all I have.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Matthew Radcliffe. I'm Radcliffe on Drupal.org. Live in Columbus, Ohio. I wish I had time to do more Drupal engagement than I do now, and the last year has been pretty tough on me. The Central Ohio group hasn't met in 5 years, 6 years, except for the university. So that's one thing in my local community. I look towards the university group, and that they've been meeting well. And I struggle with, since there aren't a lot of bigger agencies, or there's not really a place to meet that isn't some non-Drupal company, and I struggle with kind of an image problem with PHP and Drupal in the area, in the local area. So JavaScript and .NET and Java are pretty big in this area, in this region, and it's often difficult to be honest with myself and say, hey, I represent the Drupal community. I'm a mentoring coordinator for Drupal core. Here's what we do. We have a lot of cool things, because sometimes I feel a little embarrassed because some people just start trashing PHP or Drupal. Something that Jen Lampton mentioned in a MidCamp keynote from, I don't know, several years ago. I'm sorry for rambling, but one thing that she mentioned, and I tried to say, was to be proud of PHP. And so even though trying to do that, it's still sometimes difficult to organize locally and connect with people. So that's kind of, I'm here to listen and whatnot. Ta-da.
Hi, I'm Joe. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I have in the past been pretty active in our local community. Like it sounds like many others, that has been less active in the last year. I've helped to organize the Twin Cities Drupal Camp in the past, though in recent years, my role has become more of like answering the questions about like, why does this thing work this way from 10 years ago? And I'm like, oh, let me tell you about why we have that ridiculous feature on our website. I didn't have anything specific I wanted to get out of this session. I've always found community to be fascinating. I am a big proponent of trying to help create spaces where people feel welcome and engaged, and like to try to contribute in that way to Drupal whenever I get the chance. Yeah.
I'll go after Joe because I'm only a couple miles across the river and down the street from
Hi,
Joe
Dan.
in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm Dan. Yeah, we haven't done much the last year or so, especially with the pandemic in the Twin Cities, but I've been a longtime member of the Twin Cities Drupal group as well. I kind of became the leader of the monthly, like, just hang out at a bar for a few hours or a tap room or something. So that's kind of a lot what I do in the community so far, but I'm definitely also interested in just understanding, how we can improve the community as well and being a part of that discussion. So, and I also work at Pantheon as customer success engineer, so helping customers with issues. So
I'm happy to go next. Tara kind of blew my cover. I am on Tara's team, the community team at Pantheon, as one of her direct reports. So I'm here for Tara, but also because I really passionately love communities. I'm from the WordPress community. Joining Pantheon has brought me into the Drupal space, so I'm very, very new here. I have been around the WordPress community at least for more than a decade, organized several of our local camps. I'm in Western Michigan, so across a lake and a state from Joe and Dan. yeah, like I said, I'm really excited about communities, learning some of the similarities and differences from between the two WordPress and Drupal communities, and kind of seeing how my background with WordPress can be translated and brought us and bringing some energy into the Drupal space.
WordPress people, we like WordPress people too. We might not like the website, but their community is awesome.
Well, good. At least I'm not a website, I'm a person, so it works out pretty well.
No, there were a bunch of WordPress people that came to DrupalCon like 2-3 years ago and talked about a ton of the community stuff, and it was really, really interesting.
I would love for that to happen more often. I know Tara, it feels the same way. Really excited about very similar technologies and very similar trains of thought as far as open web. And it would be really fun to get together more often.
I don't think we've heard from David yet. David Hong.
Hi, my name's David Wong. I know some of the people on this call. I'm a long retired Drupal community organizer that was heavily involved for a number of years with the camp out in California. But I've retired because I'm a dad now, and I'm just popping in between meetings at my day job because it's California and I'm still working and I don't get the day off. Just saying hi.
Hi, David.
My favorite parts about this conversation so far are I'm retired because I'm a dad now, and I'm not a website, I'm a person. I'm learning a lot from this session. It's awesome.
I think we need to capture those in the notes. Oh, we're recording too, so it's perfect. I didn't know you could do that, by the way. Retire once you became a dad, so I'll have to take that.
I would also like to retire. I'm not a dad, but I've got a couple of kids.
Does anybody remember, I think it was the Drupal board meeting in Amsterdam. With Holly was talking about community engagement, and she had an idea, but I'm not sure if I was listening correctly, and maybe it was a different idea, but it was kind of like the ambassadorship program, but trying to reach out and represent the Drupal community in other spaces. Is that just me, or does anybody else remember that? I guess, I'm sorry.
No, I've heard about a Drupal ambassador thing, but I felt like it was something different.
Yeah.
Right, and I've heard it several times, Matthew, as well, amongst the community. I don't recall Holly's session specifically, but the ambassador program, with what you're saying to promote Drupal, to even other groups, is something that has been discussed.
I'm sorry, did I say Holly if I meant Heather?
Yeah, okay. All right, so now I definitely remember it. I didn't remember Holly doing it.
What looks like they had, yeah.
Yeah, what would you think that program would look like, Matthew, or anybody, in terms of, what would an ambassador role be?
I feel like, being able to represent the community, the Drupal community at events that are non-Drupal, and likewise for like WordPress community coming in, or JavaScript or front end. There's a lot of large conferences, which unfortunately are a lot more expensive than DrupalCon, where I don't feel like I see any representation from our communities.
Yeah, that's interesting. Many years ago, Boston used to have a Boston PHP meetup once a month. And I used to go and try to promote Drupal heavily. I'd promote all the events, I'd tell them all about Drupal, I'd bring in speakers for Drupal, but then they kind of faded and stopped having their meetups. But I think you're talking about something similar to that. But also globally, I think there's a big need for Drupal ambassadors to go into areas that Drupal isn't as popular. So, not necessarily reaching out to other communities, but just reaching out and letting folks in technology in general know more about Drupal.
Like I try and share, what we've learned as a community with how we contribute to open source and the scaling issues that we've seen, and being kind of on our own in our own space, which I think a lot of people are very interested in.
It seems like ambassador to me is like a role that you would want an organization like the Drupal Association to fill, and not necessarily individual people. And like, it's like no one person is a rep, like each of us is from the Drupal community, but who am I to speak for the Drupal community as a whole? Who is anyone, I guess. But I think the idea of having ways that we can help support people who want to go out and talk about Drupal in non-Drupal spaces and share lessons that the Drupal community has learned, or go to like JavaScript meetups and talk about Drupal as a useful tool, etc., could be an awesome way to grow the community and get more people interested.
I know they had that they had a slide deck for promoting Drupal, but it was promoting it for people to adopt like in a business. And I always wanted like some resource that you could take into a classroom, in front of a classroom, that would say like, this is what it is to be a developer in Drupal, but something that we could all just share. So it's already put together, what the shared information that we want to all collectively share with new developers. And then you could just take it in and run with it. But I don't think any movements happened on that at all, to my knowledge.
So that's part of what we're trying to do with the event organizer group. If you scroll up, Bob, there's that link that I dropped in. The like onboarding initiative. No, like up at the top. That EOWG onboarding. Yeah. So I mean, kind of, and Leslie like did this with the Drupal Roadshow too. But so far we've dumped a bunch of ideas and thoughts and brainstorms in here. But the plan for this initiative that like Leslie and I and Matt Saunders and Matthew Saunders and Suzanne are involved in so far is to create some structured set of documents that the community can share to promote Drupal at the non-corporate level. And I mean, I think in general, like I mean, I've been involved, I have some investment in this, but I think like the fact that some of the things we're doing on the event organizer working group are just getting off the ground after like 20 years is a thing. Like we still haven't figured out how to have cohesive messaging in Drupal and do things together. And and I think that's one of the big hurdles that we keep running into, is just like we're great at reusing each other's code, but like we're in the last couple of years we've just started kind of collaborating more on events and on more community messaging and stuff like that, and it's an uphill battle.
Are there multiple groups on that level doing the same thing? Like isn't there a promote Drupal initiative going on right now too?
Yeah, and that's what April was talking about. But Promote Drupal is, as far as I understand, not being involved with it, Promote Drupal is specifically targeted towards like corporate entities, like encouraging them to adopt Drupal sites.
Right.
It's not targeted to people to getting people involved in Drupal. And that's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I just want to say, Joe, you mentioned that the DA may be the best ambassador. And I think everybody on this call is an ambassador. I think, Joe, the stuff you do in documentation, Tara, the stuff that you do with DE&I, and everybody else on this call with running the events and everything, I think you're all ambassadors. I think we just kind of have to maybe formalize a program where we share where we're going to go, how we're going to, not promote Drupal, because as Avi just said, that's Suzanne, that's a little bit different focus, but how are we going to let folks globally know about Drupal? So thank you, everybody is an ambassador. So I think that's great that you're all involved in doing that.
And maybe some training for people who are interested in being an ambassador, but want to make sure they're doing it in the right way and they're like actually representing the community. And maybe a gateway to being an official ambassador so that we know that the people who are doing this in a more official way are the people we want to be doing it and they're doing it right.
And that's exactly like pyramid scheme, basically, of train the trainer pyramid scheme kind of thing is exactly what we had in mind for this. So like the thought was that like we would try to get something together for MidCamp and then like basically pass this on from camp to camp. And as like each camp implements it, we can improve upon it, teach more people and kind of build it.
Yeah, and we got at least as far as to promote with a few of the folks that we have contact with. And I'm not really sure how successful that is. We didn't really have a mechanism to measure whether or not we had any impact. I don't think we've looked at like the total registration, for instance, and said, oh, that person's from there and that person's from there. We haven't really evaluated that yet. So, and we didn't do as great a job as, at least I didn't, as great a job as I had hoped I could in getting out to the different groups that we'd identified. But we did try.
I mean, the one other words that I have said before, and I'll say again, because they're slightly different people, is that a lot of other countries now have these like local Drupal associations. The US has never had any even inkling of a US-based Drupal community support organization.
Is
So that's the thing.
is that because we're looking to the DA to be that for us, or?
No, it's because we're America.
Okay.
No, I think it's I think it's because just like a lot of other things in the US, right? We're so spread out and so diverse that I think coming to some of those consensuses has been hard. Having been on a lot of these calls.
Isn't a local association in the United States or in North America really just, Drupal North up in Canada, or, MidCamp or BadCamp, or, I mean, those are local groups that do meetups, that they do different things. They promote Drupal in their community. So I kind of look at those all as local associations in my mind, at least, that do the same thing that a local association. It doesn't do the financial necessarily that maybe some of those other local associations do, but people have set up, their own local funding sources.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the structure, quote unquote, or unstructure that we have right now, it's really more the larger camps and or the longer term camps and the various user groups that are around the country that are our ambassadors. And that's always been my focus, is getting to know people locally that you can actually interact with, have conversations with. And then we have a sister meetup group that's more general technology, that also is a lot of cross-pollination going on with those two groups. So we've got a lot of WordPress people in that, and a lot of like JavaScript developers and other folks in there as well. So that's been our kind of approach out in the Fox River Valley. And I'd like to know more about what some other user groups are doing that way to help promote Drupal and different opportunities that it has.
In the Twin Cities, we've tried a handful of times to like organize things with other events in the Twin Cities. So like the Twin Cities WordCamp and JavaScript events, where we'll sort of have like a reciprocal, we can have a table at your event, you can have a table at our event, as an opportunity for us to both promote the Twin Cities Drupal Camp and just Drupal in general. And what it's been a while since we've tried that, but what we had found is that like other events were generally pretty open to doing something like that, to allowing us as another community group like access to, if they had a space for sponsors with tables or whatever, to come and promote our event. But it was really hard for us to actually get anyone to go sit at the table, because, and I think for a lot of reasons, but it's like because they would have to miss a day of work to go to an event that maybe they didn't have any plans or interest in going to in the first place. And just be kind of, the challenge there was actually getting someone to go do the work of promoting Drupal at somebody else's event. But it seems like if, like as an opportunity to try to come up with a solution for that, and being able to go to attend WordCamp and have there be a table there where people are talking about Drupal and you can ask questions, or go to a JavaScript event and have someone promoting Drupal, and why you might want to look at that as an option for your project. But I don't know. There's something that we've tried that felt like this could be successful, but ultimately it is difficult to get unpaid volunteers to volunteer their time to go to sit at a table and promote a piece of software.
Yeah, that is a tough ask.
Yeah.
Out.
Yeah. David Wong wrote in chat, how the US-based Drupal sub-association or local association be meaningfully different from the DCI or the Drupal Association. And I think part of the challenge that the Drupal Association has had over the years is supporting smaller events in significant ways. It sounds like that's what some of the other associations are doing. Like Leslie said, we've kind of formed like the Midwest Open Source Alliance, which like is the fiscal agent for MidCamp, and there's like Nerd, which is kind of the agent for a number of other things like Open Collective. So there are a number of kind of disparate organizations that are providing the support for smaller events in the US, and so those are the kind of things that I could see collaboration being useful on. And again, the DA, the DA had like a funding program, like a fiscal agency program for that they discontinued a couple of years ago. They've been working really hard to promote Drupal community events, and we've done a lot of work with them getting the new community pages up on Drupal.org/community/events, and also like working on events.drupal.org and putting the community stuff there. But apart from basic marketing, I don't think the DA has a lot of resources to spend on community events. So that's kind of the idea. Yeah.
I'm reminded a little bit of a quote from WebChick and Byron, who mentioned at a Linux fest, when someone asked her about how do we attract more people, and her reply, it's kind of funny, was get them while they're young, which is how it worked for her. She was interested as a when she was younger, and that was her answer to that. So it might tie back towards the education standpoint of how do we communicate towards students and about what Drupal is and what we can do, that April brought up.
I feel like Amy June even had a program that she was doing with someone else in a high school, like, and I think it was Drupal focused. I might need to ask her about that, but I don't know if she would have, you know, like a curriculum or anything like that they were using to teach kids Drupal in high school. I don't know.
Yeah. There have been a couple initiatives over the years. I know some of the Palantir folks a couple of years ago had an initiative where they were working with folks in a boot camp or some other like some program outside of Drupal that was helping people get into Drupal space.
They were invited to MidCamp as well, and they attended.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, they were invited to MidCamp, and they got like scholarships to DrupalCon.
Do you know if there was any follow up or where they are now?
I don't. I'm going to find the link to that. I think everybody involved, everybody that I know of who was at Palantir who was involved has left Palantir.
There was an attempt to take it outside of Palantir after that time, but the last I heard about it was Seattle at the most recent. And I think it was like Treehouse had picked it up.
Yeah.
And that's about all I know.
I remember.
I don't know how it went.
I remember Treehouse getting involved, and then I also never heard anything since.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's so many like little initiatives going on around the community to either put together a set of training tools or a set of curriculum or all the documentation stuff. Nobody seems to have an idea of where everything is, and they're all over the place and they're very fragmented. So how much duplication do we have out there? I have no idea, but I bet it's massive.
Yeah, I think there's been a big emphasis from Jennifer, Joe, and everybody else that's worked on documentation to try to put a lot of, try to update a lot of the information there, try to, get rid of duplicates and try to make that a really good resource for people. So I think they've made a great start.
It's awesome. I mean, it's so much better than it ever has been. It's really gotten a lot more cleaned up.
As whenever I have a small amount of time, I try and get one of those, the contributor task pages, and try and fill one of those out, because trying to get that information out of the old handbook pages and update it is important. So it's not as scattered.
I'm going to keep being David's mouth just in case people aren't reading the chat. He said one thing he's been working on is the pitch for Drupal, that it meets a need, perhaps uniquely, that folks have, and that it's hard to make this pitch to kids except in an orthogonal fashion, like this can get you a great job, or it can lead to really cool doors opening for you, because unfortunately this is the easiest way to get things done on the web isn't true for the most part anymore. And yeah, I agree. Like
I was thinking about, like, I don't think you would go to a high school and be like, you want to take a class on learning how to build websites? Okay, like, we're going to build it with Drupal. And they would be like, sold, right? They're going to be like, this seems like a really complicated way to put something on the internet. And that, it's maybe in that scenario, like, Drupal is a thing that they should learn about and that it exists, and like the use cases that it solves really well, but it's like one of many tools that they could learn about. And then later on, when they encounter that problem, they go, oh, I remember Drupal is the solution to this problem. And then they use it and it works really well. And, now they're more engaged in the community because they've used it. But trying to go out and sell Drupal as like, you should learn Drupal because it's the solution for everything and you'll get it all the jobs, is not true.
well, those are two different pitches.
Yeah, totally.
The solution to
Yes.
everything, and you'll get all the jobs, right? Like, because Suzanne had a slide in the presentation that she did on Wednesday that was like, here are the salaries for Drupal developers, and like that's a really powerful statement. Like, I mean, we've got I haven't even looked, but like the job board, like the need is there. Like, just pitching, like, do you want a job? Here are like we're Jesus. There are 20 jobs on our job board, more than 20 jobs on our job board right now. And like that's from like, dozen sponsors, which is like a tiny subset of Drupal space. Like, so
There's also like a uniqueness, I think, to our community, and we can say this and be like, oh, we're all old, so how would these kids don't want to come hang out with a bunch of old people? But like, we have this uniqueness of we're like one of the larger open source communities, and I think we are a unique community. Hanging out with other people in different spaces is not the same as Drupal, and so how do we I guess promote even the importance of community, a sense of community in the code that you're using as well, like how all that works together, and the benefit of using Drupal in that sense for a young developer.
I love hearing April say, we're all old. Poor April, she's so old.
How old do you think I am? Because I am turning 40 this year.
Oh, that's so old.
me too.
Oh, man. If you think you feel old.
We were just talking though about how to bring in young people. I mean, if we say the community is why you come in, and then it's just like we've all been in the community so long that they feel like outsiders, or they don't find that same connection that we find, then it becomes a hurdle. And it's going to be a new community, but you want like the people who are here now to be able to I guess display the culture, to carry on that culture and pass it on to younger people so that they can continue to have the same kind of culture.
Yeah.
I think what April's saying makes a lot of sense. And I think, part of the issue, and it gets back to what Joe was saying too, part of the issue is that when some of us maybe started 10, 15 years ago making websites, that was the only way to get information out on the internet. And now the internet has changed so much that, there's all these great platforms. You can, basically build a website for free, or, get your message out there for free using Facebook or Twitter or other social media and things. And most of those didn't exist as much. And so I think that's one way that thing has changed. Even just, lots of companies just almost don't have a website anymore, or they make it on Squarespace for a few bucks, and yeah, I think that's where Joe's point really comes back to, is like, this is the tool that you need for some specific things, and they have to know when that is.
I think we're at time if anybody wants to wrap things up.
I just linked Suzanne's doc in the doc. I'm going to link Margaret's to.
I did find the timestamp in the YouTube public board meeting where there's a question about how Drupal is engaging with different open source communities. So there's something there. I haven't gone back to listen to all of it though.
Well, I'm sure the conversation will continue. Not in this space, but it will continue. I mean, there's definite benefit to getting new people involved in the community, and getting the young people involved in the community is probably the best timing. There's also, I think, an opportunity for us to get people involved that are newly coming from another industry or another space, because there's a lot of people wanting to retrofit their lives now. Maybe they're unemployed or underemployed or trying to figure out what they're going to do next. I think we're going to be in a situation for a couple years here anyway, where people are looking for opportunities. That's another audience.
Is there a clear kind of next step for those who might be interested in exploring ways of promoting Drupal, not as marketing, but promoting Drupal for education and for interest? Maybe. So go ahead.
Is that already going on, Avi? The group that you're involved in with DrupalCon or through the DA or whatever that initiative is that?
Yeah, so we're it's through the event organizers working group. I'm going to put a link to all the things in here. So we have some regular meetings, and there's a separate Slack where those are happening.
Right, so the next open meeting for the event organizers working group is on the 13th at 7 a.m. Looks like it's 7 a.m. Eastern time. We try to rotate every other time so that globally it's a time that folks can hopefully join. So everybody, an event is not a camp or a con necessarily. It's a meetup. It's somebody that, Pantheon has, Tara, you're the community engagement manager there, or I'm sorry if your title is incorrect, but it's anybody that's involved with the community is welcome to join that. So an event is really anything. It's not, don't think of it just as, people that don't run camps can't come. We love input from everybody. And you don't have to come every month, just drop in when you want to, but we discuss things like we've been discussing today.
What was the time again?
It's 7 a.m. on the 13th of April.
Eastern,
correct.
Got it.
Yeah, we've been alternating noon and midnight GMT, UTC.
So you think the onboarding initiative is the right place to continue?
That's one. Yeah, that's one of our initiatives. We have the onboarding one. We have the event. As Avi said, updating the events.d.o and the community events page. That's a different initiative. And then we have a third initiative that's looking at the camp starter kit for websites. So there's many places there, but yeah, the onboarding one is the closest to what we've been talking about today. And we're looking for volunteers to join these different initiatives as well. So
yeah, thanks for starting that onboarding one. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, sounds good.
I mean, it was literally like, I want to get this stuff figured out for MidCamp, so I want people to help me. But yeah, we need to talk more, April. I'm gonna say this at the end of each session.
Well, the next one I'm going to is I think I'm going to go to the mentorship one next. That seems like a natural path for this kind of discussion, but everyone's welcome to their own next session.
Cool. Thanks,
Good.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm gonna bug for my next one too, so thank you all.
Bye.